Okay, so we started on problem 20 last time, but unfortunately we ran out of time on it. So the big thing is, again, we knew our slope, so we plugged that in, got 2/3. We knew an x and a y, so we plugged that in, got 5 equals 3. And now we got to find what b is. So we're going to first multiply this, which 3 times 2 is 6, divided by 3 is 2. So we're going to have 5 equals 2 plus b. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides and then get b is equal to 3. Well, now that I have that, I now know that y is equal to 2/3 x plus 3. An important thing to notice is, again, you're always going to, when you write a line equation, you always have an x and a y, but what you're really trying to find is you're trying to find this slope and this y-intercept. Let's try the next problems. Okay, so it says write an line equation with a slope of -2 and an x-intercept of 3. Now this one's a little bit tricky, but you got to know what an x-intercept is. An x-intercept and a y-intercept are different. An x-intercept means that my x value is 3 and my y value is 0. So we're going to use that information to help us. What we're going to end up getting for this is we're going to have y equals -2 x plus b. And again, now I've been given a point. My point's been 3, 0. So instead of writing y down, I'm going to write 0. Instead of writing x down, I'm going to write 3. And now what's going to happen is we're going to do -2 times 3, which will give us -6. And that should equal 0. So we're going to have b equals +6. So this would be -6. When I add it to the other side, I get a +6. So we're going to have y equals -2x plus 6 as our final answer. And again, notice our x-intercept is not the same as our y-intercept. Our x-intercept is only used to help us find this point. Try these ones right here. When you're writing a line equation given 2 points, the part, like we now know, we have to do y equals mx plus b. The problem is we don't know what m or b is, so we got to find m first. If you remember before how we found the slope given 2 points, is we're going to do 7 minus a -1 over -5 minus a -1, because we always subtract our y's on top and then our x's on bottom. That's going to give us 8 over -4, which can simplify down to be -2. So then we're going to have the equation, if we plug everything in, y equals -2x plus b. But again, we could plug in an x and a y. I'm going to use these points right here. So I'm going to plug in that x and that y. And so let me erase this a little bit right here. What that would end up giving me is -1 is equal to -2 times -1 plus b. We would multiply this out and get 2, so I'd have -1 equals 2 plus b. I'd subtract 2, so I get b is equal to -3. So for this one, my equation would be y equals -2x minus 3. Let me plug everything in. Okay, so that would be for problem number 22. I'm going to erase everything so I have more room to solve 23. So again, for this one, we'd have y equals mx plus b. We're going to find our slope by subtracting the 2 points. So I'm going to go 3 minus 6 over -2 minus 4. That's going to give me -3 over -6, which will give me 1/2. I'll then use that to plug in 2 points, so I'll say 6 equals 1/2 x, which is 4, plus b. Well, 1/2 times 4 is 2, so I'm going to end up with 6 equals 2 plus b, or that b equals 4. Then again, we just plug everything in, so y equals 1/2 x plus 4. Okay, so again, for any of these problems, first find your slope, and then use your slope to find your y-intercept. Okay, so we have to write a line equations for these. What I'd first do for my table is I'm going to figure out what its slope is. So we're going to figure out what it's increasing by. This one looks like every time it's going up by 5. And this one is going up every time by 1. So we know its slope is 5 over 1. So we're going to say y equals 5x. And then we have to find its b value. Now you should remember for a y-intercept that we're just going to look when x is equal to 0. Well, that's at 2 hours. So if I think back, at 1 hour, it should be 19. And at 0 hours, it should be 14. Because if I increase by 5 every time, if we go backwards, that'd be subtracting by 5. So my y-intercept for this thing should be 14. Again, you find its slope, and then you just backtrack until when it's going to hit 0. So then when we look at this one, we can see that this is jumping by 2, and this is jumping by 1. So our slope for this thing is y equals 1 over 2x, and then we have to backtrack. This one is a little bit tricky, because when it's backtracking by 2's to hit 0. It's going to be a little bit tough, but we can see how that would work. We'd go to 3, and 3 would take us to 13. Then we'd go to 1, and 1 would take us to 12. And then, unfortunately, it's going to jump to -1. So if I think about 0, I just have to find the halfway point. So this one, if you think about the halfway point, or what would have happened at 2, this would have been 11.5. So this one, that wouldn't have been 11.5. Let me erase that really quick. That would have been, because this was 13 and this was 12, that would have been 12.5. So this one, if you jump 1/2 back, would be 11.5. So that would be that one. Again, if we have to write a line equation for this one, we have to find its y-intercept and slope. Its y-intercept for this looks like it's up 1, 2, 3. Its slope looks like it goes down 2 and over 1. Whoops, don't forget my x. For this one, we find its y-intercept first again. It looks like its y-intercept is down 1, 2, 3. And it looks like its point that it does is it goes up 1 and over 2. Okay. So again, for any of your slope, or for any of your line equations, again, you want to find your slope and your y-intercept based on whatever information they give you. Okay. So for this one, when we look at this, we're going to find its slope and our y-intercept. So when I look, this is not in a good form because I don't know what its slope and its y-intercept is. So I got to get in slope-intercept form, which means I got to get y by itself for this problem. To get y by itself, the first thing I would do, is I would subtract x from both sides. That's going to give me -2y is equal to -x plus 10. I'm then going to divide everything through by -2. I'm going to get y is equal to 1/2 x minus 5. So then I can find my slope. My slope is 1/2. And then I can find my y-intercept. My y-intercept is -5. Same thing here. What we're going to do is we're going to get y by itself. To do that, we're going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm going to get -y is equal to -4x plus 8. Then I'm going to divide everything through by -1. I'm going to get y is equal to 4x minus 8, which that would give me my slope to be 4 and my y-intercept to be -8. Try the next one. It wants me to write a line equation for this right here. If I was going to write a line equation, my line equation gives me my slope and my y-intercept. when I read through this, it says you will earn, like if your earnings are $8 per hour at Wendy's, but you spend $24 on the uniform. So if I think about this, this is a one-time cost, so it's obviously my y-intercept, and this is a multiple time thing, so it's obviously my slope because it's how much I'm increasing by. I'd say I have y equals 8x. Now if I spend money, I'm not gaining it, so I'm not going to say plus 24. Like Wendy's is not giving me $24 for my uniform. They're making me spend $24. So then this would be our answer. Now I really don't have to put 0, 0 because 0, 0 doesn't do anything. So that's how I would write it. I'd say 8x minus 24. Now they say I worked for 8 hours. So then I'd have to figure out how much money I made. Well, if I think about that, I'd make 8 times 8, because for every hour of work I make $8. But then I lost all that money on the uniform. So then I'd have to subtract 24. If we did that, we would find that 8 times 8 is 64, minus 24 gives me 40. So I would make $40. Let's look at this one. It says, write a line equation for the following situation. If you lose 3 pounds per week, again, this is my slope because it's a multiple time thing. And if I'm losing the weight, I'd say it's minus 3x. And then I started at 230 pounds. Well, that's got to be plus 230 because that's how much I started with. Now, when we look at that, we then, after dieting for 12 weeks, we want to figure out how much we weigh. So we have to do negative 3 times 12 because that would figure out how much weight we've lost since we've been going, plus our starting weight. Well then, again, we would just use this thing right here. So 3 times 12 would give me 36, and it should be negative. Whoops. And then plus 230, which will give me 194. Let's try the last couple problems. Okay, we'll see how much I get through. I probably can get through 32 and 33, and then my time might run out, but that's okay. For this one, we want to write a line equation given that the slope is parallel to this, and it goes through that point. Well, the slope is parallel. You should know the slope is the same. So that'd be negative 2x plus 9. Whoops. But your y-intercept can't be the same, so that'd be plus b. So my equation should be y equals negative 2x plus b. Again, we're going to find our x and our y and use that to plug in. So my y value would be 6, and my x value would be negative 2. Again, that'd be 6 equals 4 plus b. I'd subtract 4 from both sides. So I'd end up getting that b is equal to 2. So my line equation would be y equals negative 2x plus 2. Okay. Let's try the next one. The problem with this one is I don't know its slope. So to find its slope, I have to convert this into y-intercept form. So to do this, I would have to subtract x from both sides. And when I subtract x from both sides, I'm going to end up getting that negative 2y is equal to negative x plus 10. So then I'm going to divide everything through by negative 2. I'm going to end up getting that y is equal to 1/2 x minus 5. And that would be my answer. Well, that would be part of my answer because that gives me a very important piece of information. That gives me my slope. I'm going to erase all that and keep that on the side. So we found this. Whoops. We found this. So now we know its slope. Its slope is 1/2. And so when I write this, I'm going to write that I have y equals 1/2 x plus b. I'm going to plug in my y, which is 3, and my x, which is 4. And I'm going to get that 3 equals 2 plus b. And I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides and get b is equal to 1, which means my equation for this one is y equals 1/2 x plus 1.